Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 14-game Major League Baseball slate that starts at 7 o'clock. We do have one game with weather concerns, and that's the Colorado game. But they did play yesterday somehow. I don't really know how they ended up playing, but they did. And so there's some expectation that they'll play today as well. But we will have to wait and see closer to lock. That said, this slate, I am going to be playing light. It is pretty a rough slate, as there's some expensive pitchers that are decent, and then there's not a whole lot left in the pitching ranks. And then, of course, it seems like it's going to be a very high scoring slate with a lot of home runs and stuff. So I do think it's a big slate. So let's go ahead and get into it. Um, can you guys make sure to like, comment, and subscribe? It really does help the channel a lot. Really do appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get into the pitchers here. We're going to start with Strider for Atlanta. Now, the Angels have retooled their lineup, and Ohtani might be capable of hitting a home run in this one. But Strider has 6 games over the last 7 with 25 fantasy points, and he has been over 9 strikeouts in all of them. He makes DFS really hard on big slates because if he dominates, he likely is the high scoring player, and if he doesn't, he will really harm your lineup a lot. So I do, for GPPs, I do say make some lineups with him and like some without him. He also makes cash games almost impossible because about 40 or 50% are probably going to use them, and so depending on how he does is pretty much how you're going to win or lose. Then we're going to look at Pablo Lopez for Minnesota. He's a lot cheaper than Strider, and he should be able to reach 20 fantasy points in this one. He hasn't had many games under or over a 16 to 24 range, and I expect he will fall in that zone again. I do think he's a viable option, though he does have a slightly tough matchup here. Then we'll look at Zach Gallen for Arizona. He is facing San Francisco, and he's like a weaker version of Lopez above him for $300 less. His upside is capped in the mid-20s, and his floor is decent, though he's hitting the floor more than Lopez is, in the 14 to 22 point range is in order here. Then we'll look at Peralta for Milwaukee. In 6 of his last 9 games, he's been over 20 fantasy points. He has a couple double-digit K games as well. That said, he does give up a lot of earned runs in some, and if he can't get the strikeouts, then that will limit his upside. But he does have a plus matchup here against Washington. And then Bello for Boston is facing Seattle. He's been limiting the earned runs in most games. That said, he also doesn't get a ton of strikeouts, so that could hurt him. But he does have 20 fantasy point upside, and finding cheaper options that have 20 fantasy point upside is somewhat hard to do. But he is averaging about 15 fantasy points a game this season. I have 3 Hail Mary plays, and those are going to be Heaney, Gray, and Oviedo. So Heaney for Texas, Gray for Washington, and Oviedo for Pittsburgh. Sorry for butchering the names. Let's go and get our catchers here. So we're going to start with Will Smith. Now, Will is potentially coming back from injuries, so we'll have to wait and see because he did get hit in the last game. I do have some expectation that he'll play today because it looks like he's fine. But he's high risk to play. But if he does play, he'll have home run potential, and he's drawing a really good matchup here. Salvador Perez for Kansas City is also in play. He's got a really nice matchup here, how he is kind of a home run or bust option today, as he's hitting the ball somewhat inconsistently, but he does have home run potential, so I do like his upside. Elias Diaz for Colorado is in play. He has home run potential at home. He's a lot better at home than he is on the road, averaging almost 2 fantasy points a game more. He does have good metrics for this game as well, and home run upside. The pitching in this game is really bad, and it's definitely going to be an advantage to Colorado in this particular situation. Then we'll look at Alvarez for the Mets. Now, he draws good home run potential here. He's been inconsistent recently, but he's finally starting to get a couple hits the last couple games, and so maybe he can start raising the batting average again a little bit. But he does have good home run upside here, and he's had 3 in the last 10, so I do like his potential. Then Yasmani Grandolph for the White Sox. He's a dirt cheap option. He is a home run play or bust, but he has managed to get a couple hits in 2 of the last games. He doesn't start every game, so that is the concern here, but he does draw good metrics, and he can also play first base. You can also consider Danny Jansen, Cal Raleigh, and Sean Murphy at this position. Maybe in the first base, we're going to start with Pete Alonso, who is a core play. I do think he's going to hit home run today. He's really elevated his play recently, and he's been hitting the ball extremely well, so I do like his potential here, and he has just massive home run upside. Then we'll look at Vlad Jr., who can also play at this position for Toronto. He's still pretty expensive, and he's not hitting nearly as well as Alonso is, but he's a good contrarian play off Alonso if you want to go that way. Then we'll look at Jake Cronenworth for San Diego. Now he can play first or second base, and he's probably better fitted at second base, where it's a little bit harder to find good value. But he does play, has some good metrics for this game, and he has good potential here. I do like his upside. He's hitting the ball very well over the last 10 games. And he's just not a home run threat, but he does have good hitting potential, and he's hitting the ball well at the last week or so. So then we'll look at Nate Lowe, who's a little bit underpriced for his potential, as he usually is a little bit more expensive. He's also hitting the ball extremely well with a 394 average over the last 10. He does strike out most games, but he also has good hitting upside, so I do like his home run potential as well in this game. Then we'll look at Seth Brown for Oakland. Now he's high risk, high reward here, but he's facing Lance Lynn, who, even though he's moved to the Dodgers, is still not a great pitcher, so he does draw good metrics here. He's had some good games recently, and I do think he draws some good upside, though he is high risk. He does draw some low end home run potential in this game, though, and he can also play in outfield. And then Montero for Colorado is in play, as he draws really good metrics. He's hit the ball very well recently with a 323 average over the last 10. He is another guy that hits the ball a lot better at home than on the road. He's not really a huge home run threat, but he is a guy that can just get hits and score fantasy points. Also consider Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Dan Vogelbach, Ryan Mountcastle, and Carlos Santana at this position. Maybe in the second base, we'll look at Mookie Betts first. If he plays today, he may not, as he's taken a couple. He had some soreness in his ankle, so I do think he's got some potential here. But you do want to make sure he plays and that he's fully healthy. But he is in play, as the metrics are very good for this matchup. Then we'll look at Albies for Atlanta. Now he has been somewhat inconsistent recently, not hitting the ball quite as well the last 15 or 20 games, but he is starting to hit the ball better the last 3 or 4 games. And it's just a matter of time before he gets another home run, as he's hit some good amount of home runs this season. Then we're going to look at Altuve for Houston, who's played really well since he's been back playing, and he's got really good metrics for this game again. Though he is very expensive, he is a guy I really like, and he's a good contrarian play off of Albies if you want to do that. Then we'll look at Brandon Rogers for Colorado. He draws really good metrics for this game, though he is inconsistent as a batter typically in the past. This is only a second game of this season, so I do think he's going to have some potential here. He does have home run upside, and he looks like a interesting option on the slate, though he is high risk, high reward, but he's also nice and cheap, so he helps you pay up for other options. Kim from San Diego is also in play, though his price has risen quite a bit. But part of the reason that is because he's hitting 424 over the last 10 games with 3 home runs. He's got really good metrics, and he's hitting the ball really well. I do like his upside, though his price is a little bit more than I'd like. And then, of course, Cronenworth can also play at second base. Maybe in the third base, we'll look at Manny Machado for San Diego. He draws good metrics. He's hitting the ball pretty solidly. He is scoring fantasy points in most games, though he's not having a lot of big games. And with his price range, he does need to get 10 to 15 fantasy points at minimum. But he does have the capacity, and he's got a great matchup here in Colorado, so I do like him a lot. Austin Riley has been hitting extremely well recently with 5 home runs over the last 10 games. He seems like he's hitting a home run just about every couple games now, so he also has huge upside, though he's priced fairly expensive, so he doesn't need to hit a home run to pay off. He definitely has the capacity to do so. Then we'll look at Bregman for Houston, as he draws really good metrics here as well. He's been playing pretty good with a 300 batting average over the last 10 games. He also has had 4 home runs in the last 10, and he has got good consistency as of late. And so I do think he's a viable option. All 3 of those guys have really nice upside on the slate. Then we'll look at Chris Taylor for the Dodgers. Now, he has been inconsistent throughout the year, though he does have some low-end home run upside. His batting average has not been good, but he's been getting hits in most games recently, which give him some more upside, and he's nice and cheap, so that gives him some utility. Garcia for Kansas City is in play here at just $3,600. He's hitting the ball pretty solid recently, which gives him some nice upside. He doesn't have a huge home run threat, but he does draw good just hitting metrics for this game, and so I do like him a lot. Then we'll look at shortstop, and Bobby Witt Jr. is in play. He's been inconsistent throughout the year, but he has hit the ball really well recently, and he's been favorable in a lot of slates recently, and he's been paying off in a couple of them, as he's had some very massive scoring games where he's had 4 hits, and then he's had some other 2-hit games as well. He does have some boomer bust mentality because sometimes just goes 0 for 4, but he does have good metrics here. Ahmad Rosario is also in play for the Dodgers, and he's nice and cheap. This is only his third game with the Dodgers, but he has played well in his first two. Granted, he didn't start the second one. His first game, he went 2 for 4. The second one, he went 1 for 1. So if he does draw the start today, he's definitely going to be a great play, and he was very close to being a core play on the slate for me. I also, though, like Tim Anderson for the White Sox. He's really starting to hit the ball decently well. In fact, he hit his first home run 2 games ago. I'm a little surprised that he's finally finding it this season, as he just seems disinterested. But while he's hitting the ball well, you might as well take a look at him, as he's nice and cheap, and he gives you a nice upside on this particular slate. Tovar for Colorado also in play, though he has been inconsistent throughout the season. He does draw home run metrics in this game here against San Diego at Colorado, so he does draw good metrics, and he hits the ball quite a bit better at home than on the road. And then CJ Abrams. Now, I'm mostly mentioning him because of how good he's been lately when it comes to stealing bases and stuff. And that does give you a nice amount of fantasy points, so he's definitely worth a look from that perspective because he's stealing bases so well. But that said, if he doesn't steal a base, then he doesn't have a ton of upside on the slate. Maybe in the outfielders, we are going to look at Ronald Acuna Jr. He is absolutely monstering the ball throughout the season, and he has great metrics here. He's only had 1 home run in the last 10 games. It's a little surprising, but he's still in the base a lot. He is very expensive, so he's somewhat hard to roster as a result of that, but he definitely draws good metrics here. Christian Yelich is also in play for Milwaukee. He's hitting the ball very well lately as well. He also has stolen base potential and home run upside, and he's had 2 straight games that have been really good. He's got another favorable matchup here. Then we're going to look at Juan Soto for the Padres. Now, he has been inconsistent throughout the season, but he has hit the ball very well recently. And while he is striking out some, he definitely has home run upside, and he's hitting the ball and getting on base in a lot of different ways. So I do like his potential here. Then we'll look at Mookie Betts, who I already mentioned at second base. He can also play in outfield. Tatis Jr. can also play in outfield for San Diego, as he hasn't hit the ball well lately. He does draw good metrics for this game because he has some home run potential, though he's high risk, high reward here. And then Brandon Nimmo has hit some home runs lately, which is somewhat of a shock, but he does draw good metrics and hitting upside in this game. Though his floor is low, his ceiling is really solid. His price is a little bit high, though. Jerkison Profar is also in play for Colorado. He does draw good metrics here, though he is an inconsistent hitter. He doesn't have a ton of home run upside. He does hit the ball decently well at home, which a lot of players in Colorado does. And this is one of the best pitching matchups that Colorado has had as a team in a while, so I expect them to be highly interesting on this slate, assuming the game plays. Then we'll look at Brian Reynolds for Pittsburgh. Now, he's hit the ball pretty solidly recently. He's hitting home runs even, which is a nice advantage, though he doesn't do much else other than singles and home runs, so I do think he has some upside here. The only other risk here is that he doesn't have a lot of RBI potential, but if he can pull a home run, he'll definitely pay off on the slate, as he's fairly priced. Jack Sawinski is also in play for Pittsburgh. He's the other guy that hits home runs decently well, though his batting average is a lot worse than Reynolds. He has a little bit more power and a little bit more upside here in this matchup. Then we're going to look at Sal Frelick for Milwaukee. Now, he hasn't played many games, but he's hitting the ball pretty well. He is high risk, high reward, as his price is a little higher than I'd like for a guy that's only played a handful of games. But he does draw good metrics, and he's got some home run upside, as well as just good base hitting in general, and getting walked as well. So get on base and do things. Then we'll look at Kerry Carpenter for Detroit, as he draws some good metrics here. He's been inconsistent throughout the year, but he has home run upside. Though he hasn't hit the ball very well recently, he does draw good metrics for the home run. Then we'll look at Seth Brown, who can also play in the outfield, as I mentioned, at first base. Chris Taylor can also play in the outfield here. And then Riley Green is in play for Detroit. I do kind of like some Detroit bats today, and Riley Green is probably one of my favorite ones on the team, as he's hitting the ball very well lately. He's been hitting well pretty much all season. He's not a big home run threat, but he does draw good metrics. I mean, it's not that he's not a good home run threat. He's an average home run threat. So he has hit the ball well, and he has hit 2 home runs the last 10. He does strike out a little bit too much, but he does draw good metrics and he does get walked occasionally. So I do think he's a viable option, though he's a little bit expensive here. And then last but not least, Ian Happ for Chicago Cubs. He has not hit the home runs this season like we expected, but recently he's been hitting the ball well, a lot better, and he's starting to score fantasy points in bunches. So I do like his upside here. He does have home run upside, and I do think he's viable on the slate. With that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.